Nicola Pease, and I run Ignite Coaching and Consulting. And I am on a mission. I'm a one-woman mission to change the way that we work, basically. So even pre-pandemic, do we remember those days? Um, I started my business because as a woman with two young kids, I just could not find the flexibility that I wanted in at the level that I was at in organizations I wanted to work for. And so I decided, well, instead of kind of trying to find something externally, why don't I help organizations to create something themselves? So I set on my business. My background's HR, so I call myself a HR change consultant or a flex consultant, depending on what day of the week it is, and who I'm talking to. But really, what that is about helping organisations make flexibility the norm. So building flexibility into the way that they work and how that they can therefore open up a world of talent that is not just women, that is also men who want to work flexibly, and people with disabilities who want to work flexibly, and people who are maybe neurodiverse and want to work flexibly. So it creates there's this whole talent pool of people out there that can't work in the standard 9 to 5 Monday to Friday kind of way, and actually flexibility allows that kind of talent pool to be kind of completely opened up. So what I decided to do as kind of lockdown progressed was to start a campaign called the FlexWorks campaign. And it's a research project. So it's all about collating really the good practice and the lessons that we've learned and the great things that have happened as a result of the pandemic. We've all learned to work in a different way. So instead of us kind of as a country or as a world, instead of kind of reverting back to how we used to work, why don't we learn the lessons from the last kind of 6 months? Why don't we learn what does work, what doesn't work on a practical level in different organizations? Different things work for different people. And so the research was really just about gathering all of that information, the campaign of flexibility does work, so let's prove to the world that it does, and how you can practically then apply it to your organization. And what the initial findings are telling me is trust is how you make it work. So you have to trust that your employees are working and actually delivering what you've asked them to deliver. Shock horror, was that any different when they were in the office? Not really. But suddenly, because you can't physically see those people, there's this whole fear of like, oh, but what if? But what if they're doing this? And there's kind of like all of these scenarios that kind of go with it. Well, what if they're looking after the children while they're supposed to be working? Well, what if they're putting the washing on while they're supposed to be working? Well, what if they're taking their dog for a walk and they're supposed to be working? Well, so what? I think the biggest thing for me is we need to move away from this obsession with hours of work and instead focus on the outputs and the outcomes of what work you are delivering. So exactly as you said, you can choose when and where you work, and we should all be able to choose when and where we work within reason. I think there's no we're adults, we're grown-ups. Generally, when we get to the point where we're working, we're grown-ups. We should be trusted to get on with the job in hand. So I've created a model called the Flex Audit. And there's, because we're HR, I'm HR, I love a four like model thing. So there's 4 things in the model. But very similar to what you said. So one is what I call structure, and for me, that's your people, process, systems element. So like you said, what are your management systems and tools that you've got in place to enable different types of working? What processes might you need to change from a business perspective? So what's your workflow? How are these things happening when you're moving into a environment where you can't just wander down the office and go, hey Dave, how are you getting on? Have you got, can you like pass on the next step onto myself? You can't do that anymore. So you need the processes and the systems in place. And then from the people part of that is then designing then your organization around that flexibility. So there are some very kind of clever, similarly, some clever software companies out there that are helping look at like demand of, when do you need to be in the office? When is there a demand for people to be physically in a space to collaborate or to have meetings or to be client facing or whatever? And then when is the need not to be? So you're designing your organization kind of to structured around that. That's the structure, is the first part of the model, or one part of the model, and the other part is then performance, which is all about that metrics. It's all about those, what are those success measures, what are those things that you need to know in order to know if your people and your business is successful, because ultimately that's what it's all about. If your people are successful, your business is successful, then flexibility, of course flexibility works. If you've got those clear outcomes and those clear measures, then it becomes really easy then to kind of manage people's performance on that basis. I think historically, a lot of what we HR people have done is we've implemented processes to manage the 5% of people that don't perform. And we've ignored the 95% of people that can be trusted to get on with their job. And I think what we need is a shift away to focusing on the 95%. What are the key outputs? What are the key measurables? And then you're focusing on the outputs, not on there's that one person. And the linking nicely into the third part of the model, which is then, I call it culture, but within that is a lot of, what's your leadership style? What is the culture of the organization? How do you embed that kind of trust across the organization and the different ways of working? What are the organizational values? Because one of the things that's interesting, as part of the research, I spoke with Luke Kite from, he's the head of culture at a company called Redico, and they've gone to a fully flexible culture, is what they call it. So they're calling it, it's kind of remote first, so you can work when, where, how you choose. And what I love, it kind of sticks in my mind, what he said was, cannot give people freedom and then impose loads of rules around what they can and can't do. So when you're thinking about like that flexible strategy, what you can't do is say, yeah, we're going to go fully flexible. But you can work from home on a Wednesday. You must report in at this time. We'll have a software system that's going to monitor exactly what you're doing during the day. It doesn't work. You've got to have the culture that goes with it as well. And then the final part of the model is I call it engagement, and that's where your employee well-being comes in. It's how are you communicating with your employees? Where are you doing things like your ergonomics with them? So how are you making sure that people have got what they need to be able to work effectively for you in your organization? And hopefully, I think that it covers all of the elements that you would need to think about when you're thinking about that flexible working strategy, because it is different for every organization. But for me, you've got to have those 4 things in place if you're actually going to make it work.